Pyramidology in modern times has some rather fringe attachments, especially when we look at things like the Younger Dryas hypothesis. And for anyone who's unaware, basically, the Younger Dryas happened around 15,000 years ago. And the hypothesis is that a meteor came down and destroyed out an ancient civilization that built the pyramids. Now, as far as fringe goes, this is pretty fringe. However, that's modern day fringism. What did that look like a couple hundred years ago? Well, we're going to be looking at the 1800s, and this is what was deemed as the age of discovery and religious experimentations. So, Egyptology boomed around the time that Napoleon's expedition, which was 1798 to 1801. It's also aligned up with when the Rosetta Stone was first decoded from hieroglyphs in the 1820s and 1830s. Many new religions at this time looked at Egypt as mysterious, ancient, and a lot of verses tied back to in the Bible times. So, we're going to be looking at two major movements, the Mormons and the Jehovah's Witness. Both of these are tied to Egypt in their foundations. Now, if you are a Mormon or you're a Jehovah's Witness, then welcome. If not, then also welcome. I'm not here to attack your faith. All I'm here to do is explore the foundations. I'm not a Mormon, and I'm also not a Jehovah's Witness. I was an unbaptized Jehovah's Witness, so I was never a true Jehovah's Witness. For 16 years whilst I was a child growing up, I'll put a video of that up here that will take you more into my journey. However, let's get back to the 1800s, and we're going to start with the Mormons. Joseph Smith founded Mormonism in 1820s, and I know they don't really like that word anymore, Mormonism. I think they call themselves members of the Church of the Latter-day Saints. However, at this point, they used to call themselves Mormons. So, he founded the Mormonism in 1820s, and it was considered as the Second Great Awakening, and it was founded in New York. In the 1830s, this is when he bought all of his Egyptian mummies and the papyri to go along with them from touring and traveling expeditions all around America. Now, these papyri were claimed to be writings of Abraham himself. So Joseph Smith translated these into what is now called the Book of Abraham, and this is part of Mormon scripture within the Pearl of Great Price. To Joseph Smith, Egypt wasn't just exotic, it was the oldest civilization, and it had genuine ties to biblical history. By decoding its texts, he believed that he was restoring lost knowledge and hidden truths about Abraham, the creation, and the afterlife that mainstream Christianity seemed to have just forgotten or hidden. Now, the preface on this. Modern scholars look at Joseph Smith's translations and they don't match up with Egyptology. However, even the church's own PR are claiming that it's not a direct translation. It's more of like he was the lens that the knowledge came through, and even though it doesn't line up with actual history and actual translations, they view his message, his interpretation, as the divine or the divinity within it, rather than needing it to tie to the actual translation. So, I've said that Joseph Smith saw Egypt as biblical. Now, when we look at that, we're thinking Exodus, Joseph, Moses, and ancient, mysterious. Well, that just claims proof of authenticity. If it's old, then it's true. So, decoding hieroglyphs felt like he was rediscovering God's lost language. This gave Smith a lot of authority, because only he alone could reveal this hidden truth. So how does this compare with the Jehovah's Witnesses? Well, the Jehovah's Witnesses was founded by a man called Charles Taze Russell. Russell founded the Bible student movement that later became the Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, the Bible students still exist. Think of this as more of a schism. They split off. And the Bible students are still going, I wouldn't say strong, but they're still going at the moment. I'll flash on screen their website. So, obsessed with prophecy, numbers, and chronology, this is where Charles Taze Russell began his search. He was fascinated with the Great Pyramid of Giza, and he called it the stone witness of God in 2 of his books. Numerology came along, and he believed that the measurements inside of the pyramid itself predicted end-time chronology from the Bible. Now, it's a bit of a split from the Seventh-day Adventists, but predicting when the end of the world was happening was a big thing back then. So the claim is that the end of the Gentile Times was in 1914. He used a lot of pyramidology and measurements to get this, and then he also refined it with scripture as well. So 1914 is obviously rather well known to a lot of people who understand the Jehovah's Witnesses. However, there's a lot of lesser known prophecies that just didn't come true. For example, in 1874, he claimed that this was when Christ's invisible return would happen, and in 1878, it was the resurrection of the saints, and it was around the time that he built his mansion and called it Beth Sarim, and he held it in escrow until, the patriarchs came back. So from there, we get to 1881, which is the close of the heavenly call, and then 1910, which was the fiery judgment on all of Christendom, and then 1914, which was the end of the Gentile Times. Unfortunately, Charles himself passed away in 1916. However, there were some more predictions that he made. In 1918 would be another judgment of Christendom, and in 1925, this is when the millions now living will never die, and it was also when the return of the patriarchs should be. There was also 1975 and a few others that I'm not going to touch on. Let's get back to Egypt. The pyramid was considered Bible in stone to Charles. So if we look at some of the writings that he produced, including Studies in the Scriptures, Volume 3, Thy Kingdom Come, there includes a lot of pyramid calculations. So it was seen that the pyramid was a divine confirmation of his biblical chronology. After Russell's death, J.F. Rutherford came and rejected pyramidology outright, and this was in 1928. And he even refined it and called it Satan's Bible. So let's contrast and compare with Joseph Smith. He believed that there was papyri that would restore scripture. With Russell, he believed that it was the pyramid that would restore his view of the prophetic timeline. The shared themes here is that Egypt in the 1800s was seen as this divine witness and proof of rather fringe ideologies at the time. The wider trend isn't just exclusively locked to these two. We see worship or trying to pull hidden wisdom out of the pyramids and Egypt itself within Freemasonry, within the occultism sphere. And there's a lot of spiritual movements that are just obsessed with Egypt. Now, Egypt's motifs, they adorn Masonic lodges and rituals and symbolism. Egypt is this hidden secret symbol of ancient authority to some of these groups. So, in the 19th century, due to the sheer amount of religious hunger and the fascination with science and archaeology, Egypt offered that mystery, and it ties in with the Bible, and with it being ancient, it gives a sense of validation. The biggest question, though, is why Egypt? Now, is this for like a quest for legitimacy, or is it a fascination with lost wisdom, or perhaps a deep human attraction to mystery and eternity? Now, I'd like to know what you think. Why do you think that a lot of these cults and groups and different fringes always point back to Egypt? I'd love to hear what you've got to say. Let me know in the comments. Now, a bit of a self-plug here. I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Now, I'd really like it if you could hit that subscribe button and join me on this journey of uncovering the ancient world. Until next time, thank you and take care.